Okay, the next poem that you're going to look at is a poem titled Mother to Son by the author Langston Hughes. This author is obviously not the same as the speaker in the poem. The speaker in the poem is a mother who is giving advice to her son. You can tell once you finish the poem that she's had a lot of difficulties in her life, and she's trying to pass that wisdom on to her child. So the speaker in this poem is a woman who is giving advice to her son about how to live life. So Langston Hughes is the author, but he's not the speaker in the poem. He has created a speaker in order to convey the message, and the speaker is a mother to her son. Now, in this poem, something that you're going to realize, and I'll do my best to read it properly, is the dialect. So when we were reading To Kill a Mockingbird, we had discussed the dialect in that book and how the characters had a certain way of speaking that was unique to their location, and was unique to their culture and to their education. So I think we really saw the dialect come through when Calpurnia spoke, or when the African American population spoke, or when Bob Ewell and Mayella Ewell spoke. You could see that the way of speaking wasn't proper English. And that was due to their education, that was due to their culture, that was due to where and when the story took place. And we had discussed in class about how even in our world today, in our society today, if you go to different parts of the country, people speak a different way. They have a different dialect. And so what might be referred to, I gave you the example as, we call soda in the Northeast might be pop in another part of the country, or, the South is famous for their y'alls. That's the dialect of the location. And dialect is oftentimes influenced by geography, so where people live. It's often influenced by culture. It's often influenced by education. The more education people have, typically the dialect might be more in line with proper English. I know that my grandmother, who came from Italy, she spoke a dialect of Italian in her village where she came from, and it wasn't necessarily the Italian that you would learn if you were taking Italian in school. The Italian in school that you learn would be a very proper formal Italian, but if you went to Italy, there would be variations of that depending on what village you're in. They would speak a different dialect. So the mother in this poem is speaking a dialect that I think gives you a little bit of a sense of where she's from. And it gives you a sense of, I think it really shows you what she's been through. So here is Mother to Son by Langston Hughes. Again, it's a metaphor poem. So in Identity, the narrator was comparing himself to an object. In this case, the speaker in this poem is not comparing herself to an object. She's comparing life to an object. And she continues that metaphor throughout the entire poem. It's an extended metaphor because it continues from the beginning of the poem to the end. So listen for what it is that she is comparing life to. Well, son, I'll tell you. Life for me ain't been no crystal stair. It's had tacks in it, and splinters, and boards torn up, and places with no carpet on the floor, bare. But all the time, I's been a climbin' on, and reachin' landin's, and turnin' corners, and sometimes goin' in the dark, where there ain't been no light. So boy, don't you turn back. Don't you set down on the steps, 'cause you find it's kinder hard. Don't you fall now, for I's still goin', honey. I's still climbin', and life for me ain't been no crystal stair. It's a very powerful poem, and hopefully you saw as I read through what it is that she's comparing life to, and she picks an object that I think is kind of unique to compare life to. And she continues that metaphor throughout the whole poem by kind of picking parts of that object, and how life is not necessarily what you might think it will be. And so that's what I'll leave you with. I want you to find what it is that she's comparing life to, and what it is that she's trying to teach her son about life.